Why should they hide in the closet, afraid to be free? Everyone has human rights, equal rights, no matter what. Coming out about the sexuality, this process actually in India, it can lead to violence, it can lead to the unemployment. Our families are not accepting us. We go into depression. There is a lot of anxiety. How can we tell them? India, it's really a big stigma. Being a mental health professional, anyways, we are taught to be empathetic and have a non-judgmental attitude and unconditional acceptance. I even call the family members also to tell them if someone has come out to you, be compassionate, accept how they are, and respect whatever they feel. And I explain them like it's not a disease, it's a normal part of the life. Coming out should not even be a question, it's just humanity.
Welcome to Queer Storytime, the podcast. This is a brave space for sharing queer and trans stories of radical affirmation, acceptance, empowerment, and healing. I'm your host, Stevie Ingram. I so look forward to you joining us. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Alrighty, y'all. Queer in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Welcome to episode 22 of Queer Storytime. This month, I'll be having a special series featuring two Indian psychiatrists who have a wealth of knowledge and experience in advocating for the LGBTQIA plus community in India and beyond. And today's episode will feature this first guest. Before we get started with today's episode, I just want to remind all of you, my listeners, to join the new official Queer Storytime Community Hub, which is only available on Patreon. So I invite you to click the link in the description of this episode to join the Patreon community. You're welcome to join as a free subscriber or a paid subscriber, but either way, this will be a place for global queer and trans community connection off of this podcast. So, as I always do before I introduce guests here on Queer Storytime, I'm inviting all of you, my listeners, to sit for a moment of mindfulness and ease. And if it's safe for you to do so, you're welcome to gently close your eyes. And if not, just have a downward cast gaze. As you enter this space of awareness, you are welcome to begin relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the arms, the hands, the legs, the feet. For a brief moment, bringing attention and awareness to anywhere in the body that you feel tension or tightness or constriction. Maybe through these awareness practices, you've begun noticing for the first time that you are holding on in various places in the body. See if you can acknowledge where that is. Notice the quality of the sensation that is present. And then gently direct your breath to that area of the body, taking a deep inhalation. And then as you begin to exhale, allowing that location of tension or constriction to fully relax and release. And even if not fully, just a little bit. Taking another deep breath in, pausing at the top of the breath. And releasing the breath. softening the body wherever there's tension. And so, as you learn to do this, you begin acknowledging that this is an ongoing practice of bringing awareness to where we're holding on and using our breath as almost a valve of release. Just taking one more deep inhalation here. And a full deep exhalation out through the mouth. And gently begin opening your eyes, bringing your awareness back into the space that surrounds you. Alrighty, y'all, let's get into episode 22. Today's guest is Dr. Aninda Sidhana, who is a renowned mental health professional, educator, and advocate dedicated to advancing women's mental health and well-being. With her roots in mental health and a family background in psychiatry, she has been immersed in the nuances of mental health from a very young age. Holding an MD in psychiatry and a fellowship in psychosexual medicine, Dr. Sidhana's expertise spans stress management, addiction, marital therapy, and common mental health disorders. Her decade-long experience in both general hospital psychiatry units and in tertiary care neuropsychiatric centers equips her to handle severe and chronic mental health issues with ease. Dr. Sidhana is also passionate about helping clients in the coming out process. And it was through learning about our lived experiences and confronting the stigma, anxiety, and struggles that LGBTQIA plus persons face that led her to queer and trans advocacy and to becoming a strong advocate for gender equality and ending gender-based violence. She also works to amplify DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion in workplaces and has the crazy idea that every human being should have equal rights. Additionally, she is a member of the International Association of Women's Mental Health. Dr. Sidhana focuses on addressing women's mental health issues, including sexual problems, which often remain unspoken. She emphasizes the importance of sex education for women, aiming to break the silence surrounding women's sexual health. Dr. Sidhana serves as guest faculty in the psychosexual medicine course at JAS Mysore, sharing her expertise with the next generation of mental health professionals, where she is also a prolific blogger writing about women's empowerment and mental health issues affecting women. Recognized for her contributions, Dr. Sidhana has received the Women of Substance Award and the Women Resilience Award 2024 by the Indian Psychiatry Society. Her work has been instrumental in promoting women's mental health awareness and education. As a Goodwill ambassador, she's deeply committed to advancing gender equality, human rights, and well-being. Her focus is on empowering women and girls through education and economic opportunities, ensuring access to quality healthcare and mental health services for all, fighting for equality and justice for all marginalized groups, and building strong partnerships to create a more inclusive and equitable world. She states that empowering women is not just about giving them a voice, but also about creating a society where their voices are heard, valued, and respected. When women rise, we all rise together. It's so lovely to have you join us here on Queer Storytime, Dr. Sidhana. Why don't you start out by telling us about your early life and how you got to where you are today and how you became such a massive advocate for the LGBTQIA plus community?
First of all, I would like to thank you, Steve, for having me here and connecting with me. So basically, I'm a psychiatrist, and in 2021, I got into a psychosexual medicine specialist. And while doing my fellowship, I got many clients, and during the practice also, who had a lot of stigma, a lot of anxiety, and even the depression, PTSD, because they were not able to come out to the families. And they were even being forced to get married, which will lead to complications. So I thought like we should help these individuals. And so during that journey, I actually helped many clients in coming out process. And
Mm,
after that, I got into this LGBTQ advocacy. So people ask me like, are you a queer or why are you into this?
mm,
So I say I'm an ally with a crazy thought. Everyone has human rights, equal rights, no matter what. Why should they hide in the closet, afraid to be free? Coming out should not even be a question, it's just humanity. It's like I like vegetarian, you like non veg. So, what's the deal? Choice, freedom to choose, freedom to live with dignity and feel. Ally is a verb, call to action. It is a promise to support a journey through. For those who come out with their heart bold, so we as a mental health professionals stand to hold. I came into the LGBTQ advocacy. So first question I'm always asked if I'm a queer and why I am into this.
mm.
So because as a mental health professional, it's our duty to help everybody to have the equal human rights, and they go through a lot of challenges, even more than the normal individuals. Especially in our country, there's a lot of stigma. So that was the process I came into it.
Yeah, what I hear you saying is you and the work that you do are helping break down this stigma. It's so interesting to me that like people think you have to be queer or trans yourself to advocate for our community.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Actually, I have a podcast. So people ask me, are you a queer? And why will anyone listen to your podcast if you are not a queer? So I said,
Right.
I'm not a queer, but I'm an ally, and which is also a very important part of the journey.
Yes.
And it's a
Yeah.
continuous process. One has to continue advocating for it. And as recently, there have been a lot of changes in the law. So, which definitely need people to speak about it and make the diversity inclusive and passionate space.
Right. That's the message is that being an ally, or I sometimes what I like to call an accomplice,
Yeah,
it's not about your own individual gender and sexuality. It is just about being a decent human being and supporting other human beings that have a different lived experience than you do. That's what advocacy work is about. You know, I'm a white trans woman. That doesn't mean because I'm not a brown trans woman that I can't advocate for black or brown trans women or
yeah,
people.
definitely.
So, yeah, that's the message.
Being a mental health professional, anyways, we are taught to be empathetic and have a non judgmental attitude and unconditional acceptance, which is
Yeah,
the first part of our journey to become a good
absolutely.
psychiatrist. Even in the psychiatric community, there have been a lot of debates of LGBTQ conversion therapies and all now, which have gone, and now Indian Psychiatric Society is very supportive and released a position statement also. So things have
Yes.
changed.
Yes. And for those listening that obviously might not be medical professionals or mental health professionals, I mean, because I know you're going to be talking about it a lot in this interview, can you briefly explain what psychosexual medicine means?
Okay. So, psychosexual medicine can be a subspecialty also, like in which there are sexual problems a person faces, even hypersexuality, hypoactive sexual desire, then related to gender orientation and the sexual identity. So, all those come under the psychosexual medicine. And I always say, as you must have read also, like, I believe gender is in the brain, but sex is between the legs. So the gender identity and identifying with the gender, and even are you comfortable with that identity? That is very important, and that is a complex process. So we have to help the individuals to be comfortable with their own gender and whatever orientation they have. So it is a long process. It has a gender identity, then orientation, then acceptance of that process, and then they come out.
Right.
So psychosexual medicine includes all these things.
Right. Here's another question for you. I've had several Indian guests on this podcast. My friend Anuradha Gupta, who's an Ayurvedic doctor. I've had
Yeah, I saw she's very nice, working a lot in creating diverse, inclusive spaces.
absolutely. And then I had another guest who's a lesbian woman. She's Indian as well. On her podcast, we were talking about the conditions of which don't allow Indian queer and trans people to come out. In
Yeah.
your perspective as a psychiatrist, and given that you work with this population, what in your perspectives are like the societal conditions in India specifically that create this scenario where queer and trans people don't feel like they can express who they are or come out or whatever you want to call it? What are some of
Yeah,
the
so
reasons?
definitely in India, it's really a big stigma coming out about the sexuality. Even talking about marrying in the different caste is also a stigma in India.
Mm,
About talking about sexuality, if a female talks about sexuality, that is also considered as a stigma. So when someone comes out regarding the sexuality, it's like it shakes the whole family system.
mm,
And when I keep talks with the individuals of LGBTQ community, I tell them it's not you who need help, it's your parents and the family members who actually need to accept you and need to understand this thing, that this is normal and there is no need to shake the whole family, go into the fights or put you into the closet and get you married. I have seen people who are married forcefully, and after 5, 6 years or 10 years of marriage, they go for divorce, and it's had a very bad impact on their mental health. And
mm.
even like many clients used to come to me with anxiety, depression, social isolation, and after 2, 3 sessions, they will tell. It is like the problem is we are having like dysphoric because we are not comfortable even talking in our own family, even with the blood relatives, even if that parents, because this coming out process actually in India, it can lead to violence also. At times, the societal communal violence happens, then it can lead to the unemployment. So there are a lot of issues in India. Like the parents go into the depression. Oh my God, what my son or daughter is doing. We are not able to show the face to the society, which is actually very difficult process. Then also getting them married unwillingly, and then that complex relationship, then the divorce, all that is a very difficult process.
It
So
is. I mean, part of my intention for holding these conversations is for especially non-queer and trans listeners to like
yeah.
listen to the struggles that we face around the globe. As you were talking, I was putting some pieces together in my mind about like not only do queer and trans people around the world have to deal with just the general societal stigma of being queer or trans, but then also to the burden that they have to carry from the reactivity by their direct family members on this
Yeah,
situation.
definitely.
So, what do you do?
That's why I say the coming out, it's a lifelong process. It's not a one-time event. First, a person has to come out to himself or herself that, yes, this is my identity and this is my sexual orientation. Then they come out to their best friend or whoever their partner is or whoever they are close to. Then the next step go to the parents. Then when they go to the job, if someone gets to know. So it's like struggle of a daily life. Every month or every 15 days, someone will come and ask them. And it's like a big question mark and a stigma which they have to face. So it's a lifelong process for them, which should not be there. And that's why I keep on holding group of small meetings where they ask the questions like, what should we do?
Mm.
Our families are not accepting us, we go into depression, there is a lot of anxiety, how can we tell them? So I even call the family members also to tell them like, if someone has come out to you, be compassionate, accept how they are and respect whatever they feel. And I explain them like it's not a disease, it's a normal part of the life, but still it's a long way to go, especially in the rural population and the place where I belong to. It's a very small town in Rajasthan. Here also, I proudly say this, at least two or three marriages I have stopped who are being forcefully getting married when they were not interested and their sexual orientation didn't allow it. So I
Mm.
had to like take counseling sessions for the family members instead of the person.
That's a great direction to move in. What are some of the conversations that you have with the family members? Like I was just explaining, it's a big burden for LGBT people to not only carry the stigma of society, but like the stigma of their direct family members.
Yeah.
So, what is some of the conversation that you
Oh,
have with these family members?
most of the family members, they actually start having death wishes. They even say he should not have born only in our family, and what a blunder he has done, and please do something, whatever, even shock treatment you can give, whatever current treatment you can give to change, whatever you can do, do it, otherwise we will commit suicide or else we will give it in the newspaper, they don't belong to us. So I
Mm.
have even seen people whose family member they didn't talk to them for a year, and those guys and girls were in depression because of this. But after the sessions and when the family understood, now they are very successful in life. And
Wow.
now their family only calls me like we are proud of them. But yeah, still they didn't accept it for them to stay in India or the small town. They asked, if you want to live your life happily, go to a metro city or go to US or wherever out of India. Because in close family members, it's very difficult. Like, what will people say? This is a very common thing in India. So that is a bigger stigma.
So, did you say it takes some of these families like a better part of a year to kind of come around to?
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
almost, I hate to put the language this way, but it's almost as if they need to be like deprogrammed in a way from like the.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever I asked, even whenever clients come to me, I ask them, bring your parents. They need the counseling sessions, not you. They need to be psychoeducated about it. They need to be psychoeducated that you should be respected, you should be accepted, and not judged for your orientation. And you have all the equal rights, whatever everyone has.
Mhm.
So, some families understand and things get better, definitely. But it
What,
takes time.
right. What does the psychoeducation piece involve typically, like in a general sense?
In general sense, like explain them the gender and sex is assigned and the gender identity, being comfortable with it. It happens mostly at the 16 to 17 years of age. Till
Hmm.
then, person is not aware about the sexual orientation.
Hmm.
So we have to explain them, and then also explaining them and giving them examples of people like Prince Manvinder Singh Govil. He had a lot of courage to come out despite being from the royal family. So giving examples, and actually in India the Bollywood and the media has a lot of effect on people. So when we give examples of the web series or some Bollywood movie, then they start accepting it and understanding it a bit better.
Right. Yeah, Hollywood and Bollywood have a strong capacity to change cultural views,
Definitely.
for
And
sure.
it's like media portrayal is very important.
Yeah, art and
Yeah. In the
artistry.
positive sense.
For sure. Art and artistry has always been a positive force for change in the world,
Yeah.
no matter where we are in the world.
Yeah, actually, few days back on Instagram, I saw the article. It's like in any Hollywood movie, there may be around 30 kissing scenes. But once there is a kissing scene between same-sex people, it becomes like, oh my God. Like, even with the English movies. So leave about the Bollywood.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I think through the years, we're evolving human consciousness,
Yeah.
you know, to put it the best way that I can. And it takes time for that evolution to happen. So earlier you mentioned the white papers that the Indian Psychiatric Society came out with. I think it was those white papers that led to the overturning of Section 377, which is the anti
Definitely.
homosexuality bill. Can you speak
Yes.
about that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. Indian Psychiatrist Society played a very important role in that. And actually, there were a lot of debates, even among the Indian Psychiatrist Society. Some psychiatrists were against it.
Mhm.
And only very few psychiatrists were against it and labeled it as a disease. But most of them didn't want to be labeled it as a disease. Dr. Amrit Joshi, I think he is going to be the next guest on your podcast. He was the one to release the position statement as the Honorary Secretary General of Indian Psychiatric Society that homosexuality is not a disease. Also, those papers were submitted to Supreme Court and then the position statement was released. And now we have talked about it. Indian Psychiatric Society is working regarding the adoption rights also, which is like very difficult for a couple to adopt.
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
there are a lot of questions, and regarding that also, it's working.
So, yeah, I know that you're also not a legal scholar, you're a physician, but what do you see as the uphill battle, with same-sex adoption rights and also with same-sex marriage or marriage equality in India? Because I think it was last year or two that the Supreme Court unfortunately did not pass marriage equality. So, what do you see as the barriers to evolve
Regarding
that?
the marriage, I don't think any barriers. One or two couples actually got engaged in a proper big ceremony and it was legalized. But regarding adoption rights, there were a lot of questions raised. The questions is like, it's not about the couple, it's about a child. When
Mm-hmm,
he becomes an adult and he goes to the school and he is asked, where is your father or where is your mother?
mm-hmm,
So, what effect will this thing have on him?
right.
So, this was the question I was asked in the national conference when I presented regarding navigating complexities about LGBTQ coming out and the legalities. So, I answered like, we should not be so pessimistic. You are talking about adoption rights now, and then you are talking about after 14 years if that guy, that child who is adopted asks. So the future is not so bleak. Till then, I think things will be normalized. So
Yeah,
we should not be very pessimistic and we should work towards it that by the time that child turns 14, it's normal.
right, right.
So
And
it's like working in that direction. And I am asked a question like, what should I do when my son or girl comes out as a gay or a lesbian?
mm-hmm,
So I have made a mnemonic for that. It's like rainbow. Like one should respect the choices, accept him for who he is, inquire with empathy and non-judgmental attitude,
mm.
and nurture the self-expression, be educated and aware, offer unconditional love, and welcome with open arms. So
Wow.
that's why it's rainbow and full of colors.
Oh, I love that
So
so much. That is really beautiful. I'm going to share that with as many people as I can, and I will cite you for it.
I will share with you the other mnemonics also regarding the advocacy, what all things can be done, so people can understand it better, or you can put it on a blog or somewhere. I will share with you the presentations. Like regarding the advocacy, it's like LGBTQIA action should be taken, legislative, advocate for support. That G is for guard against discrimination and prejudice, transform society by challenging harmful stereotypes,
Hmm.
Then Q is question the status quo, why things are still the same and
Mm-hmm.
not improving.
Mm-hmm.
Then I is for inform and educate the public. So these are like things which people can remember easily and work towards it.
Right, right.
Yeah, and I think general population needs to be educated. It's not like we should discuss the more theoretical models, the policies which can be done. It has anyways all over the debate
Mm-hmm.
recently. So general population, I don't think will be able to understand all those policies and all.
Right. Yeah. This is a deeply nuanced subject area. As you are practicing psychosexual medicine, I mean, many people have never even heard of that.
Actually, I was lucky that after my first divorce, I always wanted to study more. Even like now, also, I'm looking to study more, especially for the hospital management or something, or at least start a mental health podcast because I like learning.
Mm-hmm.
So that time in the lockdown, that fellowship came up, and that was anyways a solace for me from the first divorce. I dived myself in it and studied for a year, and that was like luckily the first presentation I got to present was a coming out process. That was the first lecture I had to present, and so slowly the interest developed.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, was it when you did your psychosexual medicine fellowship that you started becoming interested in these things, or had you had an interest, like, maybe family members in your own family, or just
No,
wondering, like, what led up to you wanting to advocate
so
in this way?
yeah. So advocacy, it was not regarding the family members, but it was basically I studied in Pune and Pondicherry. And Pondicherry had a French culture
Mm,
mostly. So their things were normal and I never found anything awkward in all this. Then I used to read the articles of Indian Journal of Psychiatry. So there were many recent headlines and the editorials which used to come. So while studying, I developed interest, and my interest was basically there is a very famous psychosexual medicine specialist, Dr. T.S. Rao, who gives lectures about it. And I wanted to study under him. When I joined the fellowship, and luckily I got the first lecture, and I started working with the online psychosexual platform. And when I started getting clients and I saw the distress, so that
mm,
was the first point when I actually got into the advocacy.
wow.
Then I started organizing a few group of 30, 40 LGBTQ transgenders and people who will come and ask the questions, even in Hindi,
Mhm,
normal language, whatever doubts they had,
mhm,
and
mhm.
clarify them.
Yeah. And this is a bit of a sensitive topic to those that are going to listen to this, that are listening to this currently, but you're a big advocate against gender-based violence. Can you talk about how queer and trans people, and I know obviously you're a big advocate for women that face gender-based violence as
Yeah.
well, but can you first talk a little bit about how you've noticed that queer and trans people face this in India?
I believe gender based violence is not only for women. And also, I am not only into advocacy for gender based violence for women, though that is a very personal cause for me because I have been through that. But I believe even men also go through the gender based violence, if not physical. But men go through a lot of emotional abuse in marriages and they're not able to speak up because men are raised like not to express emotions,
Correct.
and they don't unbutton themselves, they don't express anything.
Hmm.
And sometimes men are provoked and the reaction happens. So
Hmm.
definitely men are also sufferer of gender based violence and they also need justice. And the gender based violence while studying I have seen much more prevalent in LGBTQ community,
Right.
more than the women and more than in marriages. But the data is still not very clear because people don't talk about it. First
Right.
of all, they don't talk about their orientation only. And me being a psychiatrist coming out about gender based violence was a stigma.
Mm.
And LGBTQ community people, they don't talk about it at all. And when you do online surveys or anonymous, then you get to know, but still, numbers are definitely being hidden and they face a lot of gender based violence more than the women and more than the normal marriages. That is not only in the marriages, not only in the relationships, they also face a lot of bullying at the workplace.
Yes, that's a huge
So,
thing. I personally have noticed from Indian queer and trans youth that have contacted me on social media, that is the number one thing that I hear is that they
yeah.
are continually bullied in the workplace.
Yes, definitely. It's a lot of bullying in the workplace, in the colleges, in schools. If you come out, there's a lot of stigma. People start making fun of you. They start giving you names and start mimicking you or playing some songs. And that's a lot of stigma, and they suffer a lot because of it. That bullying is much more than the gender-based violence which women face.
For
But
sure.
data is not clear, definitely, and there should be surveys and there should be more studies done about that.
Yeah, this is unfortunately one of the things that
Yeah.
I'm finding as I continue in my own medical education and as I get out there and educate
Yes.
healthcare professionals. It's like, unfortunately, there's just not a lot of research on this stuff. So, physicians and scientists around the globe need to come together to study all of these things because the
Yes.
data
And
just is not there.
so it is not only in the uneducated people. Like if I told in my medical college, like I need leave, I have a talk on LGBTQ community. So many doctors starting telling me, why are you doing all these things? Are you mad? I had such a difficulty explaining them despite being the doctors.
Right? It's the
Yeah,
doctors.
yeah. They
There's a
study medicine and all, and with few people I had argument also regarding this. Like, why is it wrong what I'm doing?
Right. The bigger question is why is it wrong that what you're doing, but also why is there such a freaking stigma in
Yes,
all of
and
medicine across the globe to
yeah,
talk about
even
gender and sexuality?
yes, I said there is nothing wrong in it, and they're like, no, no, you are promoting wrong thing. And I was shocked to hear that. I told nothing can stop me from this, and I think you should be more educated and more compassionate.
Right.
I just had that answer.
Unfortunately, does not surprise me. I'll have to send you a research study that I found probably about a year ago, but I was discussing Dr. Lulu. She's a physician pediatrician from Nigeria who has been on my podcast, and I've been on her podcast. And we were
Yeah.
talking about a study that they did here in the US. They assessed conventional medical students and osteopathic medical students about whether they felt confident providing gender and sexually affirming healthcare. And now I'm making an approximation here because I don't remember the exact numbers, but I believe it was 75% of osteopathic medical students and 65% of conventional medical students did not feel confident
I
providing queer and
have,
trans care.
yeah. Even regarding psychologists also have read the research, but it's a bit old, like 2, 3 years back, which says around 65 to 70% of psychologists are not comfortable in helping clients about the coming out process.
Mm,
So, first of all, as a mental health professional, it should be a part of the curriculum to teach them how we are taught to treat depression, to remove the stigma about mental illness. As I say, if anybody with asthma says, I can't breathe, you don't tell there is a lot of air. So, if with depression I am saying I feel sad, why are you saying everything is so happy? So, it's about the neurochemicals. There should not be any stigma, and even psychosexual medicine that should be a part of the curriculum as
right.
from the beginning. Not only in the psychiatry, it should be, I think, as a part of curriculum in MBBS only from the initial.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes. Real quick for those of you listening that don't know what MBBS is, it means Bachelor's of
right.
Medicine and
Bachelor's
Bachelor's of
of Medicine and
Surgery.
Surgery. So all doctors are comfortable. And taking the sexual history is very important part.
Right. That's another thing that study said is basically the vast majority of medical schools are not providing education in this area, which is highly problematic, which I think only perpetuates the dynamics in medicine that are
Yes,
resistant to talking
definitely.
about gender and sexuality.
Yes, actually, 12th February is World Sexual and Reproductive Health Day. So currently, I am writing about it on LinkedIn regarding reproductive rights, especially the sexual protection from STDs. So that is important thing to be taught, and definitely LGBTQ community people are prone to have STDs because they are not taught about protection first of all, and they are not open also about the communicating. So open
Yeah.
communication is the key.
Yeah, that is a big thing. Although I've heard there was a study too that came out in Europe, I believe. At least it was kind of like a comparison between the US and the UK. Like I said, in Western society, public health officials, because of the AIDS epidemic, had done a massive amount of public health education around sexually transmitted infections that because the heterosexual community was not receiving that same level of education, the incidence of sexually transmitted diseases actually increased above
Yeah.
the queer and trans population in the UK because of lack of education.
Yes. So
So,
comprehensive sex education, it should be part of the school curriculum only,
for
not only the
sure.
MBBS, because students from the beginning should be taught about it. Because in the modern world, anyways, people start dating in very early age, dating, sexual contact, as compared to what we used to have. So it should be taught from the beginning, the protection and all part.
Education needs to happen at every
Yes.
single level. I think this is something you would agree with because right now, as you can see in the United States, there's a huge, massive arguments about quote unquote indoctrinating children and all this stuff. And, I often tell people like it's literally just about providing age appropriate education on these topics. It's not
Yes.
about showing children pornography.
Yes, definitely. So it starts from a very early age. Like my sister is a child psychiatrist, so she does
Mhm.
the education about safe touch and bad touch. So good
Yes.
touch and bad touch mainly.
Yes.
So it should
Yeah,
start from that beginning.
absolutely. And
And
that's
then
such
it
a,
comes to teenage and adolescence regarding the protection, then regarding the orientation, gender identity, and everything.
yes, it's an incremental building of
Yes,
a child's awareness as they age to know what is appropriate touch. That's a really
definitely.
phenomenal way to put it. And also teaching children consent. I don't mean consent just as in sexual touch, because children should not be touched sexually. I don't mean it like that, but just like consent to receive a hug from somebody. Maybe that child's not feeling well and they don't want to be touched. So children should know that, is my point.
Consent can be like differentiated as out of the bedroom consent and inside the bedroom consent. Even
Correct.
on the social media, if someone is putting your pictures, even a normal picture, that should also be done with the consent.
Correct.
And you should not be uncomfortable about anything. So consent is definitely very important part of the sexuality and all this.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a good question for you. Like, what do you envision for changing all of these very complex dynamics that we've just discussed?
What I envision, definitely, I have studied about the United Nations SDG goals, which actually includes by 2030 peace, justice, and human rights, gender equality, and all these things should be attained.
Hmm.
But now the things are changing everywhere because of the politics involved. But still, I believe all the workplaces should be passionate, inclusive, and diversity, equity, and inclusive should be included. So that should be the goal. Not only the LGBTQ community talks about it, the more allies are there, they will
Hmm.
support more. And education is the key.
Right.
So we cannot start building up the policy, but at least we can start spreading awareness.
Right.
Policy making may be the part of the companies and all, but from the like it can be done from brick by brick, from a
Hmm.
smaller step. At least smaller step is awareness, making
Hmm.
people aware about it. Like
Hmm.
everybody has equal right.
Right.
So that is a thing.
Right. And everybody has a gender identity and sexuality. So
Yes,
why don't we talk about it
definitely.
more?
Yeah, that's the key. But
Yeah.
slowly and slowly things will improve definitely.
Yeah. I agree with you. Sometimes I just wish it would happen faster.
Yeah. So maybe it's like, as we see, sometimes things shake up badly and then everything improves suddenly. So maybe
Yeah.
it's just like that. It has shaken now, but maybe immediately things will get much better than before.
This is maybe a bit of a personal question, but also too, I'm curious. I've studied a lot of the Indian philosophy and traditions over the years. How do you think Indian spirituality philosophy can play a role in
From
all of
the
this?
from the beginning, Indian spirituality and philosophy has written about the homosexuality also. In Khajuraho temples, there are pictures of this. Then there is a god Ardhavishwara. So that in Kama Sutra it has been mentioned. But from that beginning only things were normal. But with the societal acceptations and things started changing and stigma came. But definitely, and also once the spiritual gurus start speaking about it, things will change a lot.
Yeah.
So because India, it's like a cult following. When Shah Rukh Khan speaks something, everyone will follow it. Or when Sadhguru or when any other spiritual guru speaks it, people will start following it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Indian spirituality, religion, I don't think it's against this. Because
Correct.
in ancient textbooks also, there have been examples of this, and even in the many temples and ancient sites, heritage sites, there are images. So
Yeah.
it's not a stigma.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something that I think Indian queer and trans youth may take some level of solace in is like this knowing, this spiritual knowing, this whole thing with Tritiya Prakriti, like third nature, that's
Yes.
stated in the Vedas and other Indian texts. That's something that I think people can take solace in.
Yes,
Knowing that all the
definitely.
ancient gurus and sages like acknowledge gender and sexuality to be a natural part of the human experience.
Yes, definitely.
So, yeah, and this is why I think yoga and other dharmic tools, spiritual tools, can be so powerful because these traditions are not against queer and trans people. Unlike,
Yes, it's not against. It's just like you say, na people twist the things as they want it.
correct.
So the
Yeah.
society starts twisting and giving it a different angle as per their benefit.
Yeah.
And then the ripple effect occurs and things start worsening. Then if
Yes.
someone speaks about it, it comes back to normal. So
Yes. I
then,
believe
yeah.
that I mentioned this in the prior episode of QST. We were talking about confirmation bias. When people like seek out knowledge or experiences that already confirm their existing beliefs. And I
Yes,
think that's
definitely.
how this stuff like
Yes,
tumbles
it's like
on through the
a butterfly
generations.
effect or a ripple effect which occurs. So that's why I believe that storytelling is very important part. And what you are doing on your podcast and having Prince Manavendra Singh Govil and other people, Anuradha, talk
Mhm.
about it, it gives courage to many other people to talk about it. So that
Yes.
is very important. And
Yes.
it gives them the safe space
Absolutely.
that they can talk about their sexuality and no one is judging them and they feel relieved because
Absolutely.
there is a lot of burden they have inside bottling up all this. So
Yeah.
that, and it's not like coming out is one time process, only once they have to tell. If they change the city, they change the company of the job, they have to tell it there also.
Mhm. This is an interesting question. I mean, you're a psychiatrist, so I can ask you, but I see in the queer and trans community, there's a lot of conversation specifically on chronic post traumatic stress disorder. And the conversation that often comes up is like, because of the stigma and ongoing marginalization and just like hateful things that are said to queer and trans people repeatedly throughout their lifetime. It's kind of like we experience micro trauma after micro trauma, like ongoing throughout our lives. And then those
Yeah,
little traumatic
definitely.
events accumulate into post traumatic stress. Do you have any insight into that?
Yes, definitely. Post-traumatic stress disorder is very common in queer and LGBTQ community, even in gender-based violence also.
Yes.
Because not chronic PTSD, what you said, it's complex post-traumatic stress
Complex.
disorder.
I'm sorry about
Yeah.
that. Yes.
It's
Yes, yes,
like
yes.
complex PTSD because it does not have the classical features of the PTSD of having typical panic attack or having flashback or memories, but it's much more affects you deeply
Mm-hmm.
because one comment comes and then you hit back to the previous state, and
Mm-hmm.
that is you have to bounce back again
Mm-hmm.
from the one state, like you have reached the normal level, you are comfortable around with the people around, and suddenly one negative comment it takes you back, and
Yes.
then again you have to bounce back. And that is a
Yes.
complex PTSD. It compromises of some people have amnesia of the abuse, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely LGBTQ has a lot of abuse. So that abuse amnesia is also one part of the complex PTSD. Then depression, anxiety, and social isolation. And definitely, we all know loneliness is even dangerous than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So
Yes.
loneliness kills. And I have seen my clients feeling so lonely, being cut off from the family, being like thrown out of the house. Like not literally, but nobody talks to them over the phone also.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely that affects a lot. It causes depression, anxiety, PTSD is very common.
Yeah. So what are things that you feel help heal some of that? Once queer and trans people are maybe in a safer place in their life where they can address these experiences.
Yes, first of all, we have to create a safe space. Definitely. And educating the family members, educating the people around, making workplaces being the safe place.
Mm,
First of all, coming out, as I said in the poem also, it should not be a question only.
mm-hmm.
That is a normal process. It's like one should accept it, and that should not be such complex thing that one has to keep on thinking about, I have to come out. It should be spontaneous, which is like not there. So the stigma, when it is removed, people are educated, workplace bullying is stopped, and safe spaces are created, then things can change. And other than that, I ask my clients the journaling, which helps a lot.
Mm,
Once you start writing about your thoughts and feelings, that's a catharsis kind of thing,
right,
because one cannot share with everybody,
right.
or at least one friend you can have with whom you can share. But journaling is a good thing. Then mindfulness practices, which you are
Mm-hmm.
anyways helping clients. So that actually helps. That is
Yeah.
a like grounding technique, and that is a very good method of healing mechanism.
Everybody here knows I'm a yoga therapist, and I
Yeah,
can't.
yoga is definitely. I really need to start it back. I earlier
Yes,
used to do, but it's been a year. I haven't done it.
yes. I know that
I'm just
you, from all that you've experienced, can
Yeah, so
benefit
I
from it.
have just starting it like that. I reached the stage of doing Shirshasana, that like headstand, but
Mhm.
after that I stopped it. Now I have to start again.
Yeah, it's just kind of powerful in the way that I look at yoga being beneficial, especially in like psychiatric conditions. And if we're talking post-traumatic stress, the energy of those experiences, I would say, kind of live in our nervous system and leave us in that constant state of fight or flight, that
Yes,
sympathetic response, which is the scientific term. And then you're living in those conditions. You're living in the conditions of continual reactivity. And yoga allows us, the practices of yoga allow us to draw inward and calm down
yes,
our
yeah,
nervous system. And it's that
yeah.
like continual ongoing repetition of calming down your nervous system that you begin to counter that state of post traumatic stress.
Definitely. I will share with you studies on yoga and mental health.
Yes.
NIMHANS is like one of the most premier institute of psychiatry in India,
Okay.
and it has a special center for the yoga and mental health.
That's amazing.
And even World Psychiatry Association does the certificate courses and all, which can be done online for yoga and mental health. I will share the links with you.
Yes,
And at least there are a lot of studies, lot of work being done by the people
for
in India.
sure.
And
Yeah,
also spirituality and mental health and how it helps in psychotherapy,
yeah,
especially the verses from Bhagavad Gita. It definitely helps in psychotherapy a lot.
yeah. I say that yoga is the ancient psychotherapy.
Yeah, definitely. Now it has become the mainstay.
Oh, well, yes, it has
Yeah.
become very mainstream.
Yeah, in my dad's hospital, we have yoga classes and meditation for the patients, even
Mhm.
persons with mental illness, chronic mental illness, severe mental
Yeah.
illness. So regular sessions are there. So that is a very good part. Yeah,
Yeah. It's one of the major, major, major contributions to the world that India has
yeah,
offered.
it's there.
So forever grateful for the teachings and philosophy within India.
So you should visit India. I think Rishikesh is a good place to visit. There are
Yes.
many retreat centers.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
Definitely.
Dr. Sidhana, I want to, as I do, I end queer story time with super soul questions.
Yeah.
And unless you've listened to prior episodes of QST, you don't know what the questions are. So,
No, I haven't.
um,
Like, I have listened to only the episode of Prince Manvendra Singh Govil, and
oh, okay.
one episode I listened to it. I think your first episode, which was
Oh, okay. Yeah, the
just few
introductory.
lines I
Yep,
listened.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. So I just take this as an opportunity for you to connect with yourself and just give a genuine expression of your answer, because these are questions that are supposed to come from the heart and the soul. The first question is, at this moment in time, given all of your life experiences, what do you feel that your purpose in life is?
I think I have seen it all now. So I feel it's the freedom to work. And right now, I am inspired and motivated.
Mm,
I'm on a healing journey still.
mm,
So, and healing is not linear process. So it is full of ups and downs. But
mhm,
yes, I feel very positive that I'm out of all the bad experiences.
mm. So glad you're on a new journey.
Yeah.
The next question is, you can answer this as a psychiatrist. This is normally a question that I would ask to LGBT people themselves. But as a psychiatrist, what would you say to the younger queer and trans people, either a child or queer and trans youth, about their identity specifically? Like if they were sitting in front of you, what would you
So,
say to them?
first of all, I will create a very safe space for them so that
Mhm,
they are able to talk about it and open about it.
mhm,
And one thing I will explain to them, accept yourself as you are and love yourself. Once you start loving yourself, everything else will fall into place.
Amen.
Yeah. So that is one message I will give to them.
I
So
love that.
later on, all the processes can come, but once they have to accept and love themselves.
Absolutely. That's where it starts. So we've talked a lot about this today, but just in summation, what is one major thing that you wish people globally would understand about the gender and sexually expansive community?
That human rights are for everyone and gender equality is the first basic human right. And
Yeah.
one should respect every gender, every sexual orientation, and definitely the basic respect, which I will
Mhm.
say for everyone.
Absolutely. And next question is, what would you like to say to all of these lawmakers globally that are creating laws against the queer and trans community?
It's definitely a political question, but yeah, as I say, I am an ally who is crazy and believe that everyone has equal human rights.
Right.
So, as a policymakers and as in such a high position, they should be able to understand that it's their responsibility to make every citizen feel comfortable and have all the fundamental rights, whether it's to freedom to speak, freedom to liberty, freedom of sexuality, whatever it is. So, equal rights, they should be the first person to understand, and they should make world more passionate and inclusive. And kindness and humility is the only thing I think in the world.
Yeah, it's really that simple.
Yeah, I think Charlie Chaplin said this. With love, you can win anything. You don't have to war. I don't remember who said this thing. Yeah. So love
Mhm.
is enough.
Absolutely. This is a bit of a personal question. What brings you the greatest sense of connection?
When I'm able to freely talk about my own journey, the non-judgmental attitude, and I am actually blessed and grateful for those persons in my life. I have
Mm.
very supportive friends and family, especially my brother-in-law, my sister, my parents. They have been very supportive, and the acceptance and their non-judgmental attitude is the greatest connection. So, like for me, the sense of connection is the intimacy is mainly be able to talk about your own vulnerabilities, whether the other person, he should also be vulnerable in front of me, and I should also.
Absolutely. I agree with that. So the last two questions are, where are you going from here? Like, what do you have planned ahead for yourself?
I wish I'm able to fulfill the dream. Like, I want to open an NGO, especially for the gender based violence for women.
Mm-hmm.
And that is my main aim, but it will take very long time, I feel.
Yeah.
So till then, I believe I will continue writing about it, sharing the story, helping women and even men also are affected, helping them heal. If I can provide pro bono counseling or whatever knowledge I have, I can give them. That is main thing.
Absolutely.
And another thing is now I have collaborated with Search and Inclusions because I want DEI and more passionate inclusive community. So for that, the course module is being made. So we are trying. Dr. Amrit Pratojoshi is a part of that.
Wonderful.
So we are planning to do that. And my main higher calling is to help end gender-based violence. And in India, justice is just the word. One cannot get it.
Yeah, it's just a word and no action is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work to be done.
I know that is a very long journey. So till then, I'm trying to connect with people, collaborate with them. At least more number of people talk about it. The voice is amplified. Me doing alone is not going to help.
Correct. Correct. Yeah. It takes a village, as they say, right?
Yeah,
And more than a village.
yeah, definitely. So that
uh,
is like my main calling is that is the only main calling now.
I love that. And if any guests that are listening to this podcast episode would like to get in contact with you, how can they get in contact with you?
You have my email ID, you can give it,
Yes.
and LinkedIn profile is there.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah,
Well, Dr. Sidhana, it's been so great to have you officially a part of the Queer Storytime family. I'm so
yeah,
grateful
it
to have
was
you here. And
lovely connecting with you, and you are actually very compassionate, which I love.
well, thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
that. And it's
yeah,
been a thrill to have you here and to have you on the podcast and educate the world about your work and our need for a lot of deep self reflection. So, thank you for being here, and we will catch everyone next time on an upcoming episode of QST. Hey, friends, I'm so delighted that you've made it this far. I sincerely hope that this episode has opened your heart and provided you with valuable insights into the lived experiences of those in gender and sexually expansive communities. There are several ways in which you can support this podcast. Make sure that you're subscribed if you haven't already done so, and be sure to share it with friends and family. Queer Storytime is a professionally produced podcast, which costs about $80 per episode. If you feel called to do so, I kindly ask that you support future episodes of this podcast by making a one-time or ongoing contribution that is sustainable to you. Links to contact me or to contribute to this podcast are found within the description of this episode. From the bottom of my queer heart to yours, I'm sincerely grateful for you tuning in to Queer Storytime, the podcast. Hugs and love, y'all. Until next time.